Good evening. Welcome to the WCNY Post-Standard and Syracuse.com Democratic Mayoral Candidates Forum. I'm Susan Arbetter, News and Public Affairs Director at WCNY. Moderating our forum with me is Marie Morelli, the editorial opinion leader for Syracuse Media Group, editorial opinion leader. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Susan.
We will be hearing from the three Democratic candidates for Syracuse mayor in just a moment. They'll be taking on the issues in their own words, and you can participate too. We're going to be polling our audience at home on the responses to key issues. You'll be able to cast your vote at syracuse.com/opinion. You can also head to Twitter and ask questions or share your opinion using the hashtag #SYRMayor, and your comments will all be part of our forum. Later, the candidates will take part in a lightning round, which is sort of like Family Feud, but without the feuding, we hope, okay? We're going to be closing our forum with closing statements from each candidate. Now we're going to meet them. The Democrats running for Syracuse mayor, we welcome community activist Alfonso Davis.
Thank you for having me.
Councilman Pat Hogan.
Good evening.
And Syracuse Mayor Stephanie Miner.
Thank you very much.
Marie Morelli will pose our first series of questions related to crime and policing in Syracuse. Go ahead.
Thank you, Susan. First question is for you, Ms. Miner. When you ran for mayor in 2009, you told the Post-Standard, if there's a secret to reducing crime, it's been neighborhood and community policing. You said you would increase patrols and beat cops, and now 4 years later, you say the idea of cops walking the beat is a romantic notion, and using data to deploy police resources is more efficient. What changed your mind?
Well, we went and saw the models that are working in other cities, particularly New York City, which has had a tremendous reduction in crime. And what we've been able to do is take the data that is so available to us now, and the police department has a weekly meeting where they look at the data and take the resources that we have and put them in the areas that are most struck by crime. But we've also made sure that we've taken more police out of the public safety building, put them on the streets, and in neighborhoods that need beat cops and are suffering from extra spikes in crimes, we do have beat cops. So we have cops walking on Butternut Street, we have cops walking on Geddes Street, we have cops walking on other places. So it's really about looking at models that have been effective and making sure that we can be responsive enough. We also, of course, I promised to put on police cameras in 2009, and we have done that through various neighborhoods in the city, including a couple of weeks ago on Butternut Street. In the neighborhoods where we have put crime cameras up, we've seen double-digit reductions in crime. And while overall crime in the city is down, clearly it's no surprise that our murders are up. And that is something that weighs heavily on me, it weighs heavily on Chief Fowler, and it's something that we are struggling with and working to make sure that we can end that scourge of violence.
Let me follow up on that. You cite New York City's program in fighting crime, but a judge recently questioned stop and frisk, and critics are arguing that the city's CompStat program is a failure that uses the wrong metrics. Is that the right model to follow?
Well, the model of reducing crime is the right model to follow because you've seen that they have had overall reductions.
But that's not the CompStat model is the model whereby they have so many arrests in a certain amount of time. It's measuring the wrong thing, critics say.
Well, I would say that when you look at the CompStat model, which was also being followed in Baltimore, which is also being followed in Chicago, you're looking at utilizing data. And that's what we have seen first and foremost is the most important thing, looking at the crime data and then having resources follow that. We do not have a stop and frisk policy here in Syracuse. Obviously in New York City there is a lot of discussion on people on both sides about what to do. But the places where we have seen them be successful in reducing crime and particularly gun violence have used that model to say, let's use technology and data and make sure that our resources follow that, while we also, of course, do very important things, making sure that we have good relationships between the police department and the neighborhoods.
How would you characterize your philosophy of policing?
I think it is one where you utilize both a prevention and enforcement, you utilize data, and you make sure that you are doing all of these things across the board.
We're going to go to Pat Hogan now. You advocate a broken windows strategy of policing. Can you explain how that would work, and would that involve other parts of city government like code enforcement, for instance?
Well, you know, that was a theory that back in the 80s, you know, George Kelly and James Q. Wilson came up with
a way to prevent. The idea was to prevent smaller crimes, and so they don't grow into bigger crimes. You know,
That's what New York did under Giuliani at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely, and it did change the paradigm as far as that in a lot of the neighborhoods in New York City. My idea is to have a severe police presence in most of our neighborhoods. You know, right now we deploy about 30 officers on patrol. We should have them up to 40 officers. We have one of the largest police forces for a city our size in the country. I think it's 455 officers. We have a $45 million budget. So I believe in a police presence that is in that way we have police officers tethered to each of the 38 neighborhoods in the city on a round-the-clock basis, so they know what's going on in the neighborhoods.
That's what you are advocating for, this
absolutely.
Tethering to particular, it's called community policing, I think?
Well, you can call it community policing or you can call it neighborhood policing. But I think my feeling is that the police officers have to know the neighborhoods. You know, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of police officers that came from the city of Syracuse. And a lot of times our residents don't look on the police officers as people they can go up to and talk to, especially when they're driving by at 30 miles an hour with their windows down, you know. I mean, that's not something that I think is effective policing. I think you have to get them out into the communities, in the neighborhoods, so they know what's going on.
I want to move on to Alfonso Davis, and we're going to get back to Pat Hogan on this too. But if you win the race, you are going to face the same conundrum other longtime activists have faced when it comes to the day-to-day governing of a municipality. For years, you fought against racial and social and economic justice, blaming some of the very institutions that you're now fighting to lead. How do you intend to advocate against those same injustices, while at the same time act as an advocate for the police, who will be your employees?
Well, for me, when you're looking at, from my perspective as an activist in the community in the city of Syracuse, that work over the many years, I think has better positioned me to serve as the administrator of this city, because who is better to lead a city with passion, with compassion, with empathy, with insight as to how you move a city forward, or how a city could be moved forward with the leadership that has been on the ground level. And I've been on the ground level in the city of Syracuse for over 27 years. Probably you can look at about 30 years. And when we talk about community policing, that has been my focus 4 years ago. There is a very strong, contentious relationship between the community and the Syracuse City Police Department. That relationship has to be built, and I believe it can be built through community policing, having officers walk the streets of the city of Syracuse, engage in the community, getting to know the residents, versus what I call doing drive-by policing. You cannot engage people by doing drive-by policing.
So we have a follow-up for you.
Mr. Davis, do you think the Syracuse City Police Department has more or less legitimacy in the eyes of the public?
I think it has less legitimacy in the eyes of the public. I like to say that our current top cop, Frank Fowler, has done the best job that he can do under the constraints in which he was given the autonomy to do. But you know, just a few months ago, not even a month ago, our mayor said, well, I'm giving you the authority to do what you can do to bring down crime in our community. Well, when he was appointed chief of police, I thought he had that authority then. So
let's go to Miss Minor. Do you think that the police have more or less legitimacy in the eyes of the public than they did before your tenure?
I think they have definitely more legitimacy. I think Frank Fowler has done a tremendous job in leadership of the police department. And there's been a dramatic change in culture since we first came in 4 years ago.
Pat Hogan, do you think that there will be greater or lesser acceptance to account for police actions, not only up the chain of command within the police department, but also to civilian review boards, to city councils, for example, to county commissioners, to others? Does there need to be more, the feeling that these people should count?
Well, the council, we put together CRB, and I had an appointment. In fact, my appointment was a woman who lives right down the street here on Tully Street, I think a lot of the folks who sit on the CRB right now are community folks, and they've dealt...
This is the Community Review Board.
Right, exactly.
You think that they've done a good board?
I think it's a great
good job,
board.
rather.
I mean, I think the councilors and the mayor, with the mayor have picked the people that are representative of the community, you know, and those folks have looked on, you know, they've had cases presented before them and they've acted on. But there still isn't a complete, you know, the police department still isn't on board with that. Police officers still don't go before the civilian review board.
We are going to try to start taking some interactive questions from our viewers right now. You've heard the candidates talk about policing and crime in Syracuse. We want to hear from you. All you need to do is visit syracuse.com/opinion and weigh in. And our poll question is this: which candidate gave the best response about crime and policing? Again, to vote, just go to syracuse.com/opinion. Now, we also have a social media question in to us from syracuse.com for the candidates. It comes from Maria Scaravillo of Syracuse. And Maria asks, I am concerned about the housing conditions on the north and south side. What plans do you have for cleaning up our neighborhoods and making landlords accountable? And we're going to go to Alfonso Davis first.
Thank you. Maria, for me, the city of Syracuse has to really deal with this blight, this troubling the entire city of Syracuse. We have a lot of houses that are dilapidated. And for our vision, my vision as mayor of the city of Syracuse, I would like to take those homes that have the ability to be reconstructed and do reconstruction or deconstruction. And I would like to also bring back that the dollar house, and focus on making sure that city residents have the opportunity to purchase those houses. We have a lot of landlords who are hiding behind this LLC who do not live in the state of New York. And so it's difficult for us to go at them in a way that we can hold them accountable for dilapidated homes in the city of Syracuse. So under my administration, we would like to make sure that we look at these homes, and if we have the ability to do reconstruction, then do reconstruction. And if not, then do deconstruction. That will allow for access and opportunity. It will also create jobs.
Mr. Davis, can I get Mr. Hogan to chime in on this answer, please?
You know, that's a
question?
sort of a two-part question. I mean, we've created the land bank, and I've had some problems with the land bank, mostly procedural problems with the land bank. And there's another problem, dealing with absentee landlords, which I've done as a counselor quite a bit. You know, I've developed a template in my council district where I reach out and talk to and write letters to absentee landlords, especially when they have houses where tenants are destroying.
What have you said to them?
When I get a hold of them, which is a lot, because I send letters to them. In fact, I talked to a guy in Santa Cruz, California, about a house he had, and I tell him, I said, this is not tolerable. And I follow it up, and I follow it up with stuff that's already on the books, nuisance abatement. I threaten them with the nuisance abatement procedures.
Do we need more teeth in the law?
No, I think we need follow-up. I think what we need is a bureau in City Hall, in the mayor's office, called the Bureau of Neighborhood Stability and Integrity. A lot of times in my neighborhoods that I represent, one house can start the decline of a neighborhood.
It's a problem. What do you think, Stephanie Miner?
Well, we have created a rental registry so that landlords who have properties have to register, and so that we can keep track of them. They have to pay a fee as part of that so that we can have a revenue source that comes in that helps pay for the extra services that they require and need. We have also utilized nuisance abatement, and we are also utilizing new laws with our police department to go in there and say to landlords, if you have tenants who are committing crimes, being nuisances, we're going to go after you in addition to the tenant.
Has it been effective?
It has been very effective.
Susan, can
Yeah,
I just
of
chime
course.
in? Because, you know, the mayor talks about nuisance abatement. Now, nuisance abatement was brought about with Mayor Driscoll, and his administration was very aggressive in attacking those problems in our neighborhood. Her administration hasn't been. Just recently,
Why do you say that?
Well, I just recently had a problem on Barrett Street, which is right over here, a couple blocks away. For 3 weeks, we contacted the police, codes, everybody to close down this house.
I heard you talking about this before, and nobody responded for a long time. And Mayor Miner's response to you was, well, did you tell anyone in the police?
Absolutely. I emailed a deputy chief twice on it, and also Syracuse United Neighbors contacted him too. And finally, I went down there myself twice.
So what was the resolution?
The resolution is they finally boarded up the house, but for 3 weeks,
Why,
that neighborhood
Mayor
had to put
Minor,
up with
did
it.
it take so long?
It didn't take that long, and you know, Councilor Hogan didn't talk to anybody. He loves to go around and say these things, but we have an incredibly proactive code enforcement office, police department. We boarded that up. We met with Syracuse United Neighbors. They brought it to our attention, and we were down there today making sure that the nuisance and the criminals were no longer there.
Let's look at this from another perspective here. The land bank idea is controversial. You support it. You don't. What do you think?
Well, if the nuisance abatement is so effective, then why are we still dealing with the same issue?
Well, sometimes it takes a while to fix something.
Really? How long is a while? 4 years? 8 years? 10 years? How long is a while? If we're really proactive and if we're really moving forward to build a better and stronger Syracuse, then it doesn't take 4 years to do that. It takes immediate action, it takes clear vision, and it takes clear process. It shouldn't take 4 years.
So what would you do if you were mayor?
We would make sure that the nuisance abatement is strong, that started under Mayor Driscoll, what he was doing and how he was moving it forward in terms of dealing with individuals, whether there are landlords who live in the city of Syracuse or outside of the city of Syracuse. We will make sure that we come at you very strongly in holding you accountable for what you are or are not doing to make sure that we can change
It
the
sounds
complexity.
like each of you have very similar points. We have to move on to another issue. I'm sorry.
Well, we have readers submitting questions over Twitter, and this question comes from Charlie Miller. Mr. Hogan, I'll direct this to you first. Do any of the candidates have an idea of how to finally synchronize the traffic lights in Syracuse?
I don't know if the candidates do, and I'm not sure the Department of Public Works does. In fact, we just recently on our agenda the Common Council agenda, once again, we're going to be spending more money to try to synchronize the traffic signals. Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible problem, especially in my council district on the West Genesee Street, West Fayette Street area boulevard. It seems like we have not come to grips with this problem for like the last 6 years.
Let's, Ms. Minor?
Well, we've spent millions of dollars on the interconnect to do that, but part of the issue becomes that we've had so much construction and development that we have had to turn lights off and turn other lights on. And when you have that much development going on, the traffic lights are one of the things that, you know, falls by the wayside.
I've never heard that before.
Mr. Davis?
Well, it is a big issue in terms of the flow of traffic and synchronizing it. I would just say we would definitely have to look at it from a perspective so that we can have consistent flow in the city of Syracuse in traffic. And we have to do something about changing it. And I don't think construction can stop you from doing something that will allow consistency. We're
going to move on now to our next round of more in-depth questioning. We're going to be talking about city finances. You knew it was coming. How the next mayor addresses these issues could either lead Syracuse on a path towards sustainability or insolvency. And we're going to begin with this question and for Ms. Minor. Your spending and cutting priorities are a reflection of your values. On this 50th anniversary of the March on Washington, what is one specific proposal that you would implement to ease the burden on poor communities of color in this city?
Well, I think continuing to fund Say Yes in even greater degrees and working with the school board to make sure that our schools turn around their performance. If there is a panacea to the issues that impact people of color in our city and in our country, it is in education, and making sure that they have an opportunity to have a world-class education.
Pat Hogan.
You know, I had an education plan, it's pre-K funding. I mean, I've served in the city schools. I worked in a program called SBIT, which is a school-based intervention. We have 900 kids that need full-day pre-K. And we have to allocate those resources that are in the school district that are already there in their budget to pre-K. It's the only way to get those kids up to level.
To that, because if you're going to take money away from A,
you have to front load it.
Yeah. Alfonso Davis.
Say Yes Education is a very good program, but it's not the only program. Since its conception, we still deal with a very serious issue within our community.
How would you characterize that?
well, part of that for me is that, you know, not every young person in the city Syracuse School District is either college bound or ready to go to college, or even desire to go to college. So we have to have a comprehensive vocational program that will give young people another option. We had it a long time ago in Central Tech, where they provided trades like auto mechanics, pipe fitting, carpentry, plumbing, cosmetology, food service.
This that you're talking about, the
science.
vocational and
Yes.
the front loading of the pre-K, both cost money, and we're going to get to those in a second. But I want to get to Mayor Miner. In the most recent budget, you used $18 million from the city's rainy day fund to fill a budget gap, and at this rate, the fund is going to be depleted in 3 years. Closing a fire station here, consolidating with Onondaga County there. This is nibbling around the edges of a much greater problem. Yet you say you don't want a handout from the state. What do you want from the state?
I want the state to help us change the underlying economic model for cities.
What does that mean? That's just semantics. Do you
No,
want,
it's not just semantics.
If you want
50%
state
of our,
aid, then you want
no, it's not.
money.
It's much more complicated than that. I have spent 3 years talking about this very issue because it impacts not just Syracuse, but every city in this state. And what it means is that 50% of our property is non-taxable. When we have 12% of our budget going towards pension costs and a full 20% going towards healthcare costs, we need the state to step in because clearly the taxpayers of the city of Syracuse can't bear the burden. Pensioners shouldn't bear the burden.
Okay.
So it needs to be shared across the board.
There are many people who agree that there needs to be a new thinking when it comes to our upstate urban areas. But the practical issue here is that the governor has said that he is not going to come up with more money. He'll provide help here and there, but changing the way local aid is distributed is probably not on the table. So what's your contingency plan?
Well,
Syracuse has 3 years.
What I would say to you is that we have said, and I have said, I don't want just a handout. We want to make sure that we talk about revenues and liabilities. We want flexibility. We want people, all the constituency groups, to get together and solve this problem. And just because the governor has said right now he won't, doesn't mean he's not going to have a conversation when all of these municipalities start facing financial control boards or bankruptcies. There's going to be a conversation, and I plan to make sure that Syracuse's interest will be represented in that conversation.
Thank you. Marie?
Mr. Hogan, here's a trick question. Like
Good, I want a trick question, Marie. I wouldn't expect anything else from you.
Well, everyone else will get one too. Like Michigan, New York's pensions are protected by the state constitution. In a municipal bankruptcy, a city typically has 2 big debt obligations, one to pensioners and one to the banks. In your opinion, who is the more deserving debtor?
Well, I think we got to take care of the people who've worked for us for many years. I mean, I think that's just the fairest way to do it.
So just to be clear, you're saying the pensioners are the more deserving debtor?
Well, I think the pensioners we have to take care of. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Alfonso Davis?
I would also say that those individuals who provided the service for us are the ones who we need to look at first. But just to talk about how you can move your city forward in terms of reaching out to our governor for help, I've talked about this and I've said it before. My plan, my vision to stimulate the Syracuse community, small businesses is the way to go. Every economist will tell you if you
What does that mean,
support
small
small
business is the
businesses
way to go?
systemically from start to finish, and what I mean by that is if you support small businesses from start to success and in a way that you will allow them to prosper, then your city will start growing. And part of that is saying, and I know we do a lot of giveaways, and I'm not talking about doing complete giveaways, I'm talking about a tax incentive. And what that would mean is that if you start a business, instead of taxing you at 100% out the gate, we'll put you at a sliding scale. And with 8 to 10 years, we'll try to get you up to 100%. Meanwhile, we are constantly reviewing and making sure that you're growing. And
So there'll be some accountability.
if you're not growing, we don't increase your taxes. But if you're growing, we increase your taxes until we can get you to 100%. That in itself.
We have to go to Mayor Miner now?
Yes, Mayor, in the event of a bankruptcy, who is the more deserving debtor, the pensioner or the bank?
There is no moral distinction between the pensioners and the bank. They're both commitments that the city has made, and they both have long-term and short-term problems. You can see firsthand what's going on in Detroit when you have pensioners going from $20,000 down to $10,000, and at the same time, you have the banks in Wall Street are not willing to loan governments, not just the city of Detroit, but all governments in Michigan money because of what has happened.
Thank you. Pat Hogan, you believe that we need to look inward for solutions. You have said your campaign slogan is ourselves alone. Again, let's go back to your pre-K program. I think many people believe that pre-K is the way to go, but it costs money. How are you going to pay for this program when the city has this looming deficit?
Well, we have a $677 million budget, you know, and it's about the allocation of resources.
Yes, it
I mean,
is.
and you know what? You have to front load. This is the only way we break the paradigm of poverty that we have in the city. You have to. I served
When you
just
say
up the
front
street
load, can you just explain what that means?
from pre-K through 4th grade. I mean, every educator says the same thing. If you don't bring kids up in our challenged neighborhoods, if you don't bring them up to level by the 4th grade, you're going to lose them. They'll lose any chance for success. So if you have to take money from, you know, high schools or junior high schools and put it into elementary pre-K to 4th grade, you have to do it.
You know, I think that's kind of the point. The point is that every day as mayor, you have to make very difficult decisions, and they're not abstract decisions. If you want to fund pre-K, then you got to take money from someplace else. You want to fund pensions and health care, then you got to take money from someplace else. So, Pat, just answer the question.
Well, you know what? And the mayor says it. She said a key word there, moral. I think you have a moral responsibility for the people who serve this city to pay their pensions. And the New York State pension funds is one of the best funded pension funds in the whole country. And you know, and the mayor knows, being a lawyer, she knows that the rules and regulations that affect people in Michigan are different than the way they do in New York State.
Actually, if I may point out, there is a constitutional obligation in New York as well as in Michigan to pay for the pensions.
And Susan, you know that would more litigation is not the answer.
But we're going to see more litigation.
Well, we're going to see it in Detroit for sure.
I wanted to get to the idea of consolidation. Pat Hogan, that was one of your ideas to generate some extra revenue?
Exactly. Now,
where?
The mayor's talked, you know, she's done some back office consolidation. One of the consolidations actually cost the city taxpayers more money off the county abstract. But my idea is to take some of the operating departments. So that's where you're going to save. That's where you're going to save money. I was with the city parks department for 34 years. We could easily, in fact, I proposed this to the mayor when she first got in, is to like consolidate the city parks department and the county parks department. The city parks department is about $7 million. County parks department is around $14 million. They have the same mission. That's where when you consolidate, you have to have the same mission.
Just so you know, we did speak to a guy, David Liebschutz, formerly of the Center for Governmental Research, and asked him about this plan of consolidation, and he said it's not a silver bullet. He said, unless candidate Hogan is prepared to make the hard choices to eliminate programs, merely moving people and functions around will not result in significant cost savings.
David Liebschutz probably had a lot of experience in the city
term.
in the parks departments, I imagine. I mean, I don't know.
He's got a lot of PhDs after his name.
Well, that's good. I don't have any. But I worked in the city parks department for 34 years, and I know, and I worked collaboratively with the county parks department for a lot of years, because not knowing the history of this city, we have had collaboration between the county parks and the city parks. We had it when the zoo was a city facility.
All right.
It's now a county facility. The ballpark the same
Marie.
way.
All right. Mr. Davis, we want to hear from you about what you think the answer to our financial problems is. Ms. Miner is looking to Albany for leadership. Mr. Hogan believes the answer lies within. Where would you look for answers?
Well, as I stated a moment ago, small businesses, supporting small business systemically from start to success is one, because when small businesses grow and they're successful, your city grows. And by giving them an incentive, that incentive would be a sliding tax scale. And instead of starting them at 100%, you start them at a percentage, you gradually grow them. And each year, you evaluate them, and as they grow, you increase them till we can get them to 100%.
Let me
That's
ask you
one.
Well,
The second phase
no,
is...
before you move on, if you're giving people tax abatements, how is that filling an $18 million budget gap? I mean, how do you...
Where does the money come
Where do you
from?
get that?
Well, that budget gap, well, part of that, and from my perspective, is I talked about it when we were discussing this conversation at the last radio debate, and that's creating a commuter tax. That commuter tax will be levied on city employees only. I'm not talking about putting up toll booths around the city of Syracuse. I'm talking about putting a tax on individuals who work for the city, who draw a check every 2 weeks, but yet do not reside in the city. So they put nothing in the kitty, but every 2 weeks, they expect their check.
Marie has a follow-up.
so-
And so
how
they
would that-
have to put something back into the kitty to help build up the coffer.
How much would that raise for the city?
We looked at some numbers, and I have to check back again. I don't have the exact numbers. I was in conversation with a professor at Syracuse University who was looking at the total number of individuals who work for the city, Syracuse City Police Department, fires and school district, and even some Syracuse City
You
employees.
think it's $18 million?
Well, I'm sure it's not at that level, but it's in the millions. It's definitely in the millions. So that will kind of help
Let me
ease
ask
some
you
of
this.
that pain.
One of the
For that
reasons
18 million
why
gap.
Syracuse has such a financial problem is because it is upside down, to use a term that Mayor Minor has coined. There are more retired pensioners than there are people who are actually getting a salary from the city. This administration in Albany and the legislature have provided an opportunity to localities to amortize pension payments and create defined contribution alternatives for non-represented employees, while the incumbent has said that she's not going to utilize this opportunity. Would you?
Absolutely, because I think that what the governor was imposing in terms of that smoothing plan will provide some relief. And so you have to look at where you can help your city and help yourself move forward.
So, what about you, Pat?
I was for the pension smoothing plan. In fact, it was attacked the second it was out of the governor's mouth by the mayor. And I think the thing with that is it gives a city a plan to budget on because you get a definitive amount. Now, I know Mr. DiNapoli just came out with saying that the pension, as far as his formula for pensions goes, is going to be like 1% less is going to be charged to the city, which I think amounts to like, I think around $400,000 or so, which is a savings. But you never know what that bill's going to be. That bill that comes to you, you never know what you have to pay. And when we have finite resources like we do, it helps to know what that bill is.
Let's ask Stephanie Minor why, again, she is not going to be utilizing that option.
Because it's borrowing. And if we can't figure out how to fill our $18 million, $20 million, $22 million gaps going forward, how are we going to be able to figure 30, 34, $40 million gaps? I just don't think that it is the right way to solve problems. And when you look at what happened to Detroit, you saw them borrow and borrow and borrow until all of a sudden the whole thing collapsed and the wheels fell off. And you will see very shortly that the entities and municipalities that did not engage in the pension borrowing are actually going to be saving more money because of the announcement that the comptroller made about the contribution levels going down.
That's very, very modest, though. I mean, it's like a 0.8% decrease. It's not that big of a deal.
It is less money that we will have to pay.
All right, you can respond to the candidates and their plans for the city finances in our next SNAP poll. All you need to do to cast your vote is go to syracuse.com/opinion. Which candidate's response to the questions about city finances do you feel were the best? Marie.
And I have a Twitter question here for,
Twitter question.
I'm not sure who this question is for.
Well, why don't we just say
Mr. Hogan.
Mr. Hogan.
All right. What changes will occur for the west side of Syracuse under your administration? And this is from a Syracuse resident.
Well, I think we've done a lot here on the west side. And this building right here, I mean, it used to be a case supply building. It was a near west side initiative that was supported by Syracuse University, was supported by federal money, and was supported by state money. I mean, we've done a lot of things on the west side of Syracuse. We're aggressive. I've represented this area for a lot of years. We built New Fowler High School. I've been on the Joint School Construction Board. I think all areas of all the area cities would benefit. But if we could get back to finances once, I think we have to talk about solutions here. And I haven't heard the mayor talk outside of
Let's do
asking
that
money
after,
for
after we have
development.
the other candidates come back on this question about the west side. Mr. Davis?
Well, 4 years ago when I ran, I talked about the west side, not Tip Hill or the upper part of west side. I talked about this area right where this building is, and Artisco Street and Davis Street. The poorest area in New York State, #1, the third in the country. And while some things have transpired on the west side in terms of development with this building here and others, there are other areas that have just been forgotten. And if you travel on those streets and you talk to the people in those communities, they'll tell you, we've been forgotten. No resources have really gone to the west side. When they put this building up, did they offer employment opportunities for people on the west side? Any other constructions, did they offer employment opportunities? I was just talking to a gentleman who owns a barber shop right over on Artisco Street, and he said to me, Mr. Davis, when they were doing these constructions, we didn't get any jobs. No jobs was offered to us. And I said, part of it is that they say you don't have the skill set. I said, the other part is that they don't have the political will.
Ms. Miner?
Well, look, we've had tremendous development in the city, almost close to $1 billion of private development. As was said, we're sitting right here in one of the crown jewels that took a lot of work from my administration and from others. Fowler High School, I'm proud to say that the JSCB Phase 1 was completely stalled when I became mayor. In 4 years, we've seen 4 schools renovated, including Fowler High School, which is a testament to what you can do if you have strong leadership and you make tough choices. And Fowler High School was built with very ambitious goals, making sure that we had local workforce and underrepresented populations working on those. 10% and 15% goals that we were utilized. You will see more on the west side with the innovation zones for the underperforming schools. Over here with the 7 schools, you're going to see the land bank really have a huge impact in the entire city, but over here as well, because we have a number of vacant and underutilized properties over here as well. So I think the future is very bright, and you can see the concrete accomplishments that I have made and my administration has made in the past 4 years.
We have to move on to one of our social media questions. Again, the Syracuse.com and WCNY have been collecting questions from the public. We're going to now go to our social media question, and it comes from Valerie Patrick of Syracuse. She wrote into Syracuse.com and asked, people driving through downtown see nothing but old abandoned buildings with trash on the side of the road. What is going to be done to clean up our city? Alfonso Davis.
Well, we have to make our downtown a more livable, sustainable downtown. And how you do that is you attract businesses to want to come downtown. And as mayor, you have to go and seek it. You have to reach out to companies, corporations who are interested in coming to your city, and you have to sell your city. Syracuse is a great place. You could reach 8 to 10 metropolitan cities within 4 to 6 hours. So we're still within a very good location, and you have to sell that. You have to go out and seek people who are interested in doing business in your city and give them an incentive to come do business in your city. And part of that incentive is that when they come, saying that when you bring your business here, hire some individuals in the city of Syracuse, and part of that will be that we can offer you some incentives in terms of tax incentives. Same thing with hiring veterans.
So it's sort of like Startup New York or Tax-Free New York, except
Absolutely.
with
Absolutely. You have to be a mayor with vision. You can't just think that it's going to happen by osmosis, 1, or 2. You can't think that you can rely on the loins of someone else, of their skill set, and then kind of fall into the lap of it and then say, oh, this is what I've done. We're
going to go to Patrick Hogan now.
You know, downtown's transforming, and it started under Mayor Driscoll, you know, with the Pike Block and all the great ideas that happened as far as the renovation of downtown. But the key thing is you have to support downtown. We still don't pick up the trash on Sundays downtown. I mean, it's all, you walk through downtown and you have to have somebody who's a manager who's in charge of downtown. You know, somebody who can allocate all the resources, because the dynamics of downtown are changing. It's becoming a residential neighborhood. People are living downtown, and that means it's got to be 24/7.
And we're going to come back to this. Stephanie Miner.
Look, I'm very proud of the transformation that has happened downtown. Syracuse.com has moved into the Merchants Building, the Pike Block Building. We have seen more and more businesses moving from the suburbs into downtown. We have the lowest vacancy rate in downtown of any neighborhood. It is exploding there, and it's all good news. And So the issue with trash is an issue not just for downtown, but it's frankly for our entire community, that somehow along the way we have allowed people to treat our city like a trash can. And what we have to do is say we're not going to do that anymore and continue to enforce the law and say to people, stop throwing your trash out the window.
I just would like to go back to both Alfonso Davis and Patrick Hogan and ask you to follow up. Each of you has a solution that will, while maybe it sounds effective, it's going to cost money, and I want to know, what are you going to cut in order to hire someone to be a downtown manager?
You don't have to hire anybody. Years ago, the Department of Public Works had a foreman who was in charge of downtown. That means you could bring in any resources you want to solve those problems downtown. There's nobody, right now that doesn't happen. I mean, the trash, broken tree grates, when we invite people to live downtown, it has to look like a neighborhood that's being taken care of. Also, as far as police goes, we have to have, police station is downtown, public safety buildings downtown, we have to have walking beats because we have a lot of small retail shops that are starting to support the population downtown.
To Alfonso Davis, you have mentioned the idea of economic development and small cities several times. It's clearly something that you feel passionately about. How would you work with, you're not going to get state money for this because the state money is already allocated for the Governor's Regional Economic Development Council. So what are you going to do?
Well, what we're going to do is we're going to reach out to those businesses who are interested in coming to the city of Syracuse, and we're going to attract those individuals who have.
How do you find those people?
Well, you have to make your city appealable. You have to say to them that, listen, this is our vision. And this is what we would like to do to create a better city of Syracuse, and we'd like to include you in that process. And the possibility of
You mean
growth.
invite people, sort of like outcalls? Yeah, outcalling? We want your company to come to Syracuse.
Absolutely. You have to let individuals know why this is a place to do business in your city. You have to be an ambassador for your city. Frankly, this current administration has not been an ambassador. So if you want people to come, you have to, 1, attract them, 2, tell them why they should come to your city, and 3, let them know that doing business in the city of Syracuse is a place of business-friendly people.
Let's take a hold on that and sort of, it goes perfectly, it segues nicely into our next question.
We'd like to talk about the leadership style and the role of the mayor in the city, and we'll start with Ms. Miner. Your opponent has criticized you for frequently being out of town on Democratic Party business and holding up in City Hall rather than being out and about in the neighborhood. If you're reelected, specifically, what would you do to engage city residents more?
Look, when you're a mayor, the second you leave your door in the morning till the second you come back, you are engaged with city residents. I have a citizens cabinet that I meet with regularly. I'm out in the community all the time. I'm at neighborhood meetings 4, 5 times a week. I'm on the phone with people, I'm answering emails, I'm meeting constantly. It's an accusation that Mr. Hogan has made because candidly, he doesn't think that the mayor should be out advocating for the city of Syracuse in places like Albany and New York City.
So let me
and
ask
I think
you,
that's an important role.
Can you state exactly how the residents of the Near West Side benefit from your high statewide profile?
I can tell you exactly, because you're sitting in a building right now that has gotten state money and federal money because of the profile. Eric Schneiderman was 2 blocks away from here talking about the land bank and the great work that the city of Syracuse has done in a land bank. We're one of the first in the state. And Eric Schneiderman came here and talked about how well positioned we were to have more money because of the high profile that I've taken.
All right.
But how many people did it hire from the Near West Side? How many employment opportunities did it create for the people on the Near West Side?
Patrick?
I bet you can't answer that.
The mayor once said to me, it's always important to take credit, but you can't take credit for something she's never done. I was on the Near West Side Initiative first board. I was on the West Side Community School Strategy. All the money allocated for all this was allocated before the mayor became mayor. I go to every neighborhood watch meeting and TNT meeting in my council district. I have never seen the mayor at any of them. And as far as her being co-chairman of the New York State Democratic Party, I think that's brought us pain because she's used that position to attack the governor. She's verbally attacked him in the New York Times, and we need a good relationship with the governor of New York State.
At the same time, the incumbent has also received plaudits from a lot of notable people, including Lieutenant Governor Richard Ravitch, for her honesty when it comes to the city's difficult financial situation. Things are not going to get better for Syracuse unless something changes. We need to know specifically, and I think the public is owed it, are you prepared to state on the record that the city will either face cuts in services or increases in taxes if you are elected? I'm going to ask you, Afonso Davis, and you, Patrick Hogan.
Rephrase that question to me again.
The question that I'd like to ask is, are you prepared to state on the record that under your tenure as mayor, the city will either face cuts in services or increases in taxes?
Absolutely. I'm prepared to say that one of those two will take place. And an increase in taxes, I've talked to residents in the city of Syracuse, and they said that they don't mind paying a higher tax if they can assure that the services will be rendered. If we can definitely render the service that is required by the city of Syracuse, then there are residents who would not mind paying a higher taxes. And we also have to look at the significant cuts that need to take place. But I just want to kind of real quickly go back to this style of leadership. I was just in a conversation with a young lady 3 days ago who said she reached out to Stephanie Miner when I campaigned 4 years ago, and she took my palm card. She told me. I took it, threw it in the garbage because my mind was already made up. She was voting for Stephanie. And her neighborhood group, this is a young lady on the east side in an area that is dealing with a lot of criminal activity and a lot of issues, and she's one of those strong individuals, homeowner. She owns 2 homes.
What is the upshot here?
The upshot is that she's reached out. That group, they try to start a neighborhood watch
It's a
group,
community activist
community
group,
activist.
and they reached out to the mayor.
And she reached out to Mayor Miner's office, and she told me specifically that her office said the mayor was too busy to deal with things like that.
Okay, time out. Stephanie Miner, can you please respond?
That's just not true. You know, Mr. Davis can say things like that. It's just not true.
All right.
I could give you the name and her address.
We will talk after the program. Patrick Hogan.
Well, I've been a proponent of consolidation. I think we have to walk along that path. I've talked to the head of the county legislature about this.
Let's play what if. If there's not enough money that comes out of the consolidation, where would you cut, or what kind of, would you say that you're going to cut or raise taxes?
Susan, the mayor talks about hard choices. We've never tried consolidation. We've never tried, like what Mr. Davis alludes to, about raising tax revenue. Right over here, because a couple of miles away, we put $250,000 on the tax rolls. 33 buildings have been renovated. They've all been, of course, obstructed by this administration. They've all had stop work orders on them and everything else, but we fought through. We can redevelop this city. We can raise tax revenue. Raising tax revenue, $250,000 is a lot of money. And also in consolidation, I like to walk along that path before I even talk about raising taxes. Raising taxes doesn't get us any money. The city we only get $99 million in taxes.
It doesn't have the wherewithal. There's just not enough
Our average house
revenue in this
average
town.
house in Syracuse is $75,000.
Okay, so if you could just give us one cut.
One cut? I'd rather consolidate the Syracuse Police Department, the County Sheriff's Department.
All right, we have another question for you. This is the lightning round, by the way.
This question is for Mr. Hogan. What option for Interstate 81 do you favor?
I don't favor either of the options that have been presented. I'd like to see it go underground. I don't see why all of a sudden Syracuse has to take one of the two options, and neither of those options benefit the city.
All right, Ms. Miner?
I think you have to tear down 81. A bigger, brighter, shinier interstate through Syracuse is not going to do the city, Onondaga County, or Central New York any good.
Mr. Davis?
When they first built 81, they dismantled the 15th Ward. That was a very strong community, particularly for the African American community. And you still have a large portion of African American individuals living in that area. And they have not been brought into the conversation as to what's going to happen. So again, here we are talking about doing something that will disenfranchise a lot of people, but no one has brought them into the conversation. So before we talk about
Lightning
doing
round.
anything, we must bring them into the
Lightning round.
conversation.
The next question goes to Stephanie Miner. Should the city dissolve in favor of a metropolitan form of local government?
I don't know. I don't have enough information on what that means.
Alfonso Davis.
Rephrase the question.
How about if you rephrase the question? You wrote the question.
Should the city dissolve in favor of a metropolitan form of government?
No.
Dissolve the city into a metropolitan.
No.
It's an option that has to be looked at. As you well know, New York's Secretary of State has monies to look in consolidation too.
Alfonso Davis, what would you do to get the Hotel Syracuse back in business?
As I talked about, you have to be an ambassador of your city. And being an ambassador of your city, you have to look to individuals who are interested in coming and making Hotel Syracuse a viable hotel again. It was once one of the cornerstones of the city of Syracuse.
So outreach.
Well, it actually was looked at. We almost had it. Like under Mayor Driscoll's administration, the historic restoration out of, they had done the Grand Hotel in New Orleans and St. Louis, looked at it. We actually had funding for it.
So,
I think
but
we
what
have to
would you
reach
do?
out too. But first we have to get out of the legal entanglements, obviously.
Stephanie Miner.
We'd have to have a viable developer, which I think we're very close to having. I do have to say, though, I have to laugh that Mr. Hogan has been such a proponent of Mayor Driscoll's, because when he first ran for the council, he talked over and over, and his whole campaign was based on his opposition to Mayor Driscoll.
All right, next question. Mr. Hogan, what can a mayor do to turn around our chronically underperforming schools?
I think advocate. You have to advocate for the families and the children.
Would you
have to
ever
be
want
in the
mayoral
schools.
control?
We talked about it. In fact, Mayor Miner and myself talked about it, and we both espoused it, I believe, when she was head of the Education Committee, that we had to look at. She was very critical of the former school superintendent.
Alfonso Davis.
Mayor control?
Well, what can a city mayor do to help turn around the chronically underperforming schools? And the sub-question will be.
Okay. Well, part of that for me is, again, say yes to education is great, but we must have some options. Those options have to include a comprehensive vocational program, because a lot of our young people are dropping out of the city schools because they don't feel connected to the process.
Would you want to be in control?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I don't think any mayor should be in control of our Syracuse City School Board.
All right. Ms. Miner?
I think you have to be aware of the unique challenges that we as a city have and our children, our families have. We have 327 refugee populations from July 1st to this year that have enrolled. That's 327 different languages as one example. You have to be a champion. You have to make sure that we get our equal share of funding from Albany, and you have to support the families, and you have to be innovative and look at what's going on,
Thank
for
you.
example, in the innovation zone that I spoke to today, and spoke to 300 teachers and told them how important they were to our future. And the answer is yes, I would be in favor of mayoral control.
Lightning round is over. We want to thank all of the candidates. We have some time remaining, and in that time, we've asked that each of you present a 1-minute closing statement about why voters should cast their ballots for you. And we are going to begin with Pat Hogan.
Oh, thank you. And I want to thank both of you for moderating this. I want to thank Mr. Davis and Mayor Miner for being here, and all the folks that have tuned in. I think a lot of you people out there, you know me. I've been around a long time. I thought a long time about running for mayor, and I did it because I wanted to give the Democrats a choice and the neighborhoods a voice. In the end, this next election will be to decide the city of the future, the city that we decide to leave our sons and daughters. So I hope you can consider me, and please vote on September 10th. Thank you.
Thank you. We now go to Ms. Miner.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Maria. I too want to thank the viewers for their participation today and listening. 4 years ago, I was unknown, and I said to the people of the city of Syracuse, I will always tell you the truth, and I will make the hard decisions necessary to move our city forward. And 4 years later, I'm very proud of the track record we have. $1 billion in private development, downtown in our neighborhoods exploding with good news and good growth. Say yes to education. 2,100 students from the city of Syracuse are going to college on behalf of Say Yes to Education. And we are forging new roads with innovation, with both crime cameras and also the land bank and all sorts of things. But make no mistake about it, the challenges that we've had in the past pale in comparison to the challenges that we're going to have in the future. And I, as mayor, have always been honest and straightforward with you about the tough choices that we face, and you have always heard from me. I think what you've seen lacking in my opponents tonight is not one of them has been willing to say or specify one tough choice that they would make. They spoke in broad terms but never said anything specifically. I have a track record of being specific, and I have a track record of looking out for the people of the city of Syracuse and making the city move once again.
Davis.
Change will not come if you wait for some other time or some other person. You are the ones that you've been waiting for. This current administration has led our city nowhere. She's led with a demonstrous attitude, a polarizing figure in the city of Syracuse, and that's not what we need in order to move our city forward. You need a mayor with a vision. You need a mayor with the possibilities of bringing new life to the city of Syracuse. You need a mayor who's going to include everybody. Every individual voter out there is a stakeholder, and you are included. A poll was done that said that this current mayor has 59% of the vote. They measured that out of 924 people. Someone said to me, I never got called. You are the ones that I consider the invisible. They don't see you, but I see you. I hear your plight. I hear what you're talking about every day when I go out and campaign. On September 10th, I ask that we chart a new course, a course that's going to lead the city in the right direction and that will bring inclusion versus exclusion.
We are
Consider me.
out of time, unfortunately, but we could definitely go on and on. Thank you very much to all of our candidates. And also, thank you just for your time and your willingness to serve. Thank you, too, to our partners here at Syracuse.com. Marie Morelli, you were terrific. I hope it wasn't too painful. And thank you at home for participating. Our forum will be rebroadcast on WCNY's World Channel. For information, go to WCNY.org/where to watch. For all of us at WCNY and the Syracuse Media Group, thanks for joining us. Good night.